guy.
Ooh, almost. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for clicking on the clip. Today we're going to be talking about turbo cut cranks for two-stroke motors. Turbo cutting is a style of machine work done to the crank that is supposed to increase horsepower and overall flow of the actual port work and motors. What it does is it kind of works as a regular turbo where it pushes more air and fuel to the top end to give it higher compression and more power overall. So with that being said, here we go. Let's break down into this video and get you guys some pictures so y'all can see what we're talking about when we talk about turbo cut cranks. Then maybe it'll look a little bit like it makes sense and you can kind of see how it will work. So here we go. Shrink me down a little bit here. Whoop, too much. Alright, so we look in, we see the grooves in the crank. These are what they would be referring to as turbo cut. What this does is it creates a vortex inside the crankcase and pushes the fuel and air down to or up to the top end. This here is another style. This is actually blown all the way through. This is a different kind of crank where the weight's on one side and it's kind of hollow, so you can actually blow it through and any of the gas fuel air mixture that's inside this area gets pushed out as well. So this will actually push the stuff that's in between the crank halves out instead of forcing it to go out through around the actual flywheel itself, or not flywheel, but the crank half. Let's see what else we got here. This is another style. This is a little on the strange side to me. That's a lot of work, but this looks like it's a really small style crank, so I would think like a weed whacker or maybe a lawnmower engine or a chainsaw maybe. But this also gives anything that gives it some kind of fin that's going to allow it to make some kind of wind vortex inside the crankcase is what you're trying to get to. So with that being said, this is kind of the animation that we're looking at. My fat head in the way. But as you can see, it turns around, and as the crank spins, it pulls the air in, it forces the air up, and it goes through the firing cycle of a two-stroke motor. As this crank spins, you can kind of see how it would actually take, kind of like a squirrel cage does on a fan. It takes the air and it just causes it to push to the outside. When it pushes to the outside, it's got no place to go but up to the top. So there you pretty much have it. That is a turbo cut crank, what it is and how it works in a nutshell. The horsepower gains on this are minimal. It's free horsepower. This is horsepower that you don't have to get a bolt on or anything extra. It's part of the motor. You modify this component itself and it creates you extra horsepower. Um, there's multiple different ways to cut these cranks. I've seen these grooves where they were really close together and they were really fine. I've seen other grooves where they were deeper and wider. I personally cut these at about a 30 to 35 degree angle and about a 16th of an inch deep. I have done these kind of cranks in the past in my own builds, and yes, it is an actual noticeable power boost. You're relieving weight in the crank, so in an essence you're losing rotating mass, which actually makes it spin a little bit faster. It increases the top RPM of the motor actually, because you're reducing weight on the crank. You still have maximum piston velocity, but depending upon the CC of the motor, chances are you're still going to be a few thousand RPM off of maximum piston velocity. Even 500cc motor with really heavy piston, they don't make components big enough to get these things to spin fast enough for a piston to shell itself just off of velocity itself. Usually there's other issues like oil. Let's see what else we got here. Drawbacks to a turbo cut crank. If the motor's not ported, you don't have a big enough carburetor, the exhaust isn't modified, you're really not going to notice any difference. It's an expensive mod. It's not something that somebody's just going to charge $50 for you to do. They've technically got to pull everything apart and do each half by itself, put it all back together. It's a big job, so I would imagine the cost of this is well over $250. I know I charged $4 for my job, but that was quite a few years ago actually. You would think this would mess with the balance issues on a two-stroke, especially something when you go radical like this. This is removing a lot of material from the weighted area actually. So this would actually knock off the balance some. You would think with a heavier explosion you would actually want more weights. A lot of these two strokes are counterbalanced with a secondary shaft, so people don't worry about it. If the motor's got no counterbalancer like a Tri-Z or a Ducati 250, it's gonna vibrate more, but at the same time you're building a lot more horsepower and it's a trade-off. Just use red Loctite. What else we got? That should be about it. The video's not really as long as I would have liked it to be, but there's really not a whole lot to get into in a two-stroke cranks when it comes to turbo cutting these things. There's multiple ways to do it. In a nutshell, you're just looking to force air to the top end a little bit harder and faster than a flat crank would. And this is how you do it. It's expensive. It gives you extra horsepower. It gives you extra RPMs. It lowers your torque a little bit because you're lightening the crank, but the horsepower gain kind of compensates for the torque, so it's a trade-off. Other than that, if you guys got any questions, comments, you want a little bit more information on this, maybe I can dig around, and there's really not a whole lot more except for maybe dyno results, but people aren't really big on posting dyno results when it comes into custom mods on these motors that are not your typical mods. Port work, everybody's got their own styles, so yeah, they kind of want to brag, look at what I can do, check this out, and they get dyno results on their port work. When you start doing stuff like crank mods that are not popular and people don't do commonly, it's not something that you really want to brag about. You just want your motors in there, you want them winning, you want the riders in there winning, you want everybody happy, you want them to last, and it's very hush-hush on the super secrets of how a lot of these guys build motors. I've been doing this for a very long time, 30 years plus, actually 35 years plus, so it's more of I'm trying to share my knowledge with all of you guys, and it helps if I get the mouse in the right spot. This is more of a thing for me trying to share my knowledge with you guys so that the technology doesn't die. A lot of builders, a lot of fabricators don't want to share their knowledge. They don't want to share their abilities and their trade skills, secrets, because they want it to stay their own. Well, that's fine. I've got SCS ported jugs out there. If you guys want to copy it, by all means, have fun. Copy it, see if you can. It doesn't really hurt my feelings at all. Imitation is the best compliment, in my opinion. So if you like what I'm doing and you want to try and replicate it, by all means, have fun. I'm sticking my knowledge out there. I'm sticking my abilities out there. And any questions or comments you guys want to have, send them out there. Let me know. I'll make a video of it trying to answer them the best that I can, and we'll go from there. I really appreciate the support. Don't forget, hit that like button. It does push the videos. It pushes the channel and all that stuff. Comments. Get them subscriptions up. Hit that subscribe button. It's just a little button. Click it, and you don't have to worry about it again. You get notifications when I upload a video. Other than that, you don't get notifications. You can actually click it so that you don't get notifications, but I just really appreciate the subscription itself. If you've made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate it, because that helps push the video even better, because the longer you watch on my channel, the more my channel gets pushed. So, all said and done, at the end of the day, my knowledge is going to be your knowledge, and I appreciate you guys tuning in and spending the time to watch these. We will be doing more videos on motor builds, how-tos, what-tos, and whys. And till then, have a great day. See ya.